Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Pewaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
I'm calling all Swifties. Chimney Swifts are back in town, and you could catch their spectacular show at a chimney near you. The small, fast-flying birds are known for the tornado-like dance they perform in the sky. Brenna Marsacek is the director of outreach with the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance. She says that at dusk, the birds will dive head first into a chimney to roost, sometimes by the thousands. Marsacek joins Lake Effect's Excret Nunez for this month's Chirp Chat to learn more about swifts and what's being done to protect them.
Fall migration is already in full swing, and among the birds migrating to warmer climates from and through Wisconsin are chimney swifts. Brenna, before we dive in to talk about how spectacular these birds are, what is it about chimney swifts that fascinates you?
Hands down, my favorite thing about chimney swifts is their swirling tornado roosting behavior that they do each fall. And we can go into that more in a little while. And the way that they sound. I love their calls. They make a high-pitched, kind of twittering, fast, repetitive, bubbly noise. And it just sounds like happiness to me when I hear it. It's always, from above because they're almost always flying. So it's a fun thing to hear and then look up and have that audio experience confirmed by seeing the swifts darting around above you.
I was just going to say, I love how you describe, the swirling vortex of chimney swifts. But for folks who aren't familiar with chimney swifts, can you describe what they look like?
They have a really distinct body shape. Their nickname is a flying cigar. So if you can picture what a cigar looks like, where it's kind of oval shaped and stubby, and that's kind of what the body of a chimney swift looks like. They have a short tail. Their beaks are short and pointy. They have really long wings for their body size, which helps them be super acrobatic flyers. So when you see them flying, you can tell right away that it's a chimney swift. If you have that image in mind of the flying cigar, you can tell that that's what you're looking at.
And you mentioned that they have tiny bills. What do they eat?
Yeah, that tiny bill is an indicator of their diet. So usually birds that have small or short and pointy beaks are insectivores. And that's what chimney swifts are. They're called aerial insectivores because they eat almost exclusively insects and they eat almost entirely while flying. They eat lots of different types of insects. They can eat flies and wasps and beetles, maybe some mosquitoes, but they're usually flying a little bit higher up. So whatever insects are up higher in the air column is what they're eating. And I recently read that they can use their bills to catch a larger insect that they can eat. But with smaller insects, it just goes straight down the hatch while they're flying. So they fly with their mouths open and they just swallow them right while they're flying.
That's amazing. And like I mentioned earlier, chimney swifts have already started to migrate out of Wisconsin. Can you tell me more about their migration patterns?
Typically, we start seeing chimney swifts in Wisconsin in April or so. They come from a long ways away. So they spend their winters in South America in the Amazon basin. So in countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, they migrate around 3,000 miles to get to places like Wisconsin for their nesting season. So they spend their summers in the eastern half of the United States, east of the Rockies, more or less, and even into southern Canada. So this is where they nest. They nest in chimneys and in silos and other, originally they would have nested in like a hollow dead tree prior to the construction of all these chimneys. But now chimneys are just kind of the perfect habitat for them, so they often use them for nesting and roosting. So they arrive in Wisconsin in April, they spend their summers here, and then typically late August through September is when they migrate back down to the Amazon basin.
So you mentioned nesting and roosting. For people who aren't familiar with those terms, what's the difference between the two?
So nesting is when two adults will build a nest, and with chimney swifts, that's built on the inside of a chimney. It's like a half of a small bowl that you would imagine in your kitchen cupboard. They build that out of twigs and spit, and they stick it to the side of the chimney on the inside. And they lay their eggs and raise their young from this spot. And there are other adults that will sometimes fly in and out and bring food and help with that nesting, but there's only one nest per chimney. Roosting is different in that that's when big flocks of swifts will come together and come down from flying and just cling and sleep inside of a chimney for the night. So that is typically many, many swifts inside of one chimney per night. They're not raising young, they're just coming together to sleep for the night, probably because with so many of them being in the chimney, they can help each other stay warm and avoid predators. So if there's a flock of hundreds or thousands of swifts, it's power in numbers. It's more challenging for a predator to target, one particular bird as it's coming out of the chimney.
Definitely. And do you know if chimney swifts stay in the same chimney all season long, or every year do they return to the same chimney?
For nesting, it's hard to say. They may have some nest fidelity. And as far as roosting goes, there is a lot of evidence that shows that swifts will use the same, they know the good chimneys for roosting while they're migrating. And so they consistently use a lot of these chimneys year to year. Whether it's the same exact birds, I'm not sure, but it's a common practice for them to return to these important roosting chimneys year after year. So I think it's just more about the opportunity, whether there's a chimney available to them to nest in.
So say that someone sees this, this huge swift NATO swirl in the sky. Are they as abundant as people might think?
That's a really important question. So chimney swifts are not as abundant as they used to be. And what these swift NATO, these swirling vortexes that happen before they come into roost, what that might give the illusion of, because they were just this year classified as a tipping point species in the 2025 State of the Birds report. So that means that they have lost more than 50% of their population in the last 50 years. And they were classified as an orange alert, which means that they're down by 50% and their declines have sped up a lot in the last 10 years. So that's a really serious problem for chimney swifts. And we think that it's because they are losing habitat, which for chimney swifts is chimneys, and other places that they could roost, like hollow trees or silos. These are things that are less abundant on the landscape now than they used to be. And because they're aerial insectivores. And we know that the insect population is down, and as a result, so are the animals that rely on these insects.
Right. That makes sense. I'm Lake Effect's Excret Nunez, speaking with Brenna Marsacek about chimney swift conservation. So we've been talking about how amazing chimney swifts are, but they are a vulnerable species. You've listed some of the biggest threats to their population. What are some things being done to help chimney swifts? It's clear that protecting roosting sites is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question because it's really solutions focused and what we can do to reverse this trend. And fortunately, there are things. So some of it has to do with chimneys. If there are old chimneys that need to be maintained, sometimes that's pretty expensive. So, helping fund chimney maintenance and restoration is a great way to keep these large roosting chimneys in operation and available to swifts during their migration so that they can come down and roost. Home chimneys are a bit complicated, right? Because they are often capped to exclude critters like raccoons and birds, and that includes chimney swifts just by default, because once it's capped, the chimney swift can't get in there to nest or to roost. So there are ways to avoid capping. that prevents, rain from coming in, but allows chimney swifts to be able to enter. And if you have a chimney that is not capped and not lined with a metal liner, making sure that the chimney is cleaned out or swept during non-nesting periods, in early April or after the summer's end. That's a great way to make sure that the chimney is not full of soot and gunk on the inside walls, because that can cause the nest to kind of slip and fall off. As aerial insectivores, another thing that we can do for them is to plant native plants, because native plants support many times more insects than ornamental plants do. And along those lines, reducing or eliminating use of pesticides at home or in areas that we can control is really important for that same reason. And then I'd also say that participating in or hosting even Swift Night Out events is a really great way to just raise that community awareness of this important, awesome bird that does this amazing thing and what their conservation needs are. So, it introduces people to what these birds are, helps them fall in love with them like so many people do when they watch these Swift Night Out events, and then maybe do some work to help protect them as well.
And I know that there's a really great Swift Night Out event in Madison. Are there Swift Night Out events all across Wisconsin, though?
Yeah, absolutely. There are about a dozen or so towns in Wisconsin that have Swift Night Out events, and those can all be found on the Wisconsin Chimney Swift Working Group website. So that link is wiswifts.org. And on the homepage, they have it all listed out. There's some in Fond du Lac and Janesville. And so there are lots of different options for being able to participate in a Swift Night Out. And even if you don't see a Swift Night Out event listed on that website, that doesn't mean that there aren't swifts roosting in this way in a community near you. It just might be that no one's hosting an event there yet. So fall is a fun time to keep an eye out on those big old chimneys that could be hosting these amazing roosts for chimney swifts.
Definitely. And another conservation project I just wanted to bring up is Swift Towers. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
So Swift Towers is a concept that allows people to create man-made structures that ideally chimney swifts would use as a nesting and or a roosting spot. So picture a chimney, but usually they're freestanding and made of wood. So they kind of have that chimney look, but they're not attached to a building and they're not used for typical chimney purposes. So Cherokee Heights Middle School is a wonderful spot for chimney swifts, especially during migration, because it's a big old chimney that can host thousands, upwards of 1,500 birds in a single night. We often have Swift Night Out events there because it's reliably great for watching chimney swifts. And of course, not every year will chimney swifts use that particular chimney, but it's a really big and a really great roosting spot for them. This particular chimney is interesting too because this middle school is in need of a new building, and funding for that has been approved, and so they'll get a new building within the next few years. So our organization is working really hard on coming up with a way to still preserve this site as a roosting site, even when the old building along with the chimney is torn down. So we're proposing that the new school have a faux chimney attached to it. A similar tower has been built in Manitoba, Canada, successfully, and it's large. It'd be a similar size to what the current chimney on the school is, so that it can continue to host that many chimney swifts each night during migration. So it's a really exciting project, and we're just in the beginning of talking with neighbors and the school district and the staff at Cherokee Heights itself. So we're hoping that this is something that we can partner with them on in the coming years.
Absolutely. And I'll have to follow up with you on, the status of that project as it goes on. Well, Brenna, we've reached the end of Chirp Chat, which is when I usually ask people to highlight a bird for the month. But for this episode, I'd like to ask you, in addition to chimney swifts, what's another bird you're keeping an eye out for during this fall migration?
Good question. I'm gonna say nighthawks, common nighthawks. This is
Ooh.
a really fun time, and actually, it's a great pairing with chimney swifts because nighthawks are often flying around in similar areas at similar times as when chimney swifts form this swirling vortex of birds that go into the chimney at night. So when you see a bigger bird that has white bars underneath its wings flying around near chimney swifts, that is a common nighthawk, and they're also wonderful birds that are really fun to spot. So I'm keeping an eye out for those as well.
I will too. Well, Brenna, thanks so much for talking to me today and telling me more about how important chimney swifts are and how to protect them.
Thank you. It's been great talking with you, and thank you to everyone listening.
Brenna Marsacek is the Director of Outreach with the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance, formerly known as Madison Audubon. She spoke with Lake Effect's expert Nunez for a monthly series we call Chirp Chat, which you can find as a podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcasts.
It's rare to find a podcast that can actually change your life. But when the show's called Life Kit, that's kind of the whole point. I'm Marielle Segarra. 3 times a week on the Life Kit podcast, we guide you through a topic we could all use help with, from personal development to healthy living to managing your dinero, with takeaways so you can start living what you learn right away. Escucha el Life Kit podcast from NPR.